This monstrous brutality is but the latest act in Colonel Gaddafi's reign of terror.
This will not stand, this aggression against Kuwait.
Terrorism is one of the greatest dangers we face in this new global era.
In time, it became only a number. A crime so enormous, a plot so evil, that the words never came to describe it. 9/11. On a beautiful September morning, nearly 3,000 people were murdered in Lower Manhattan. It was the spectacular escalation of a war waged against the United States for more than 20 years.
Without securing our people, we have nothing. We have no freedoms, we have no democracies, we have nothing. Ask the families from those that died on September the 11th. If they had had the proper security and we had taken more military action earlier on, that September 11th attack may not have occurred.
Bernard Kerik is the former commissioner of the New York City Police. He lost 23 of his officers on September 11th.
I was standing beneath Tower 1 when Tower 2 exploded over top of us when United Flight 175 crashed through the tower, watching the people jump from the buildings. Going back to police headquarters that night to talk to the family members of the missing. We lost 23 police officers, 22 men and 1 woman. I had to go back and talk to their families.
9/11 was the vision of a murderous Saudi millionaire and his gang of religious warriors. America, Osama bin Laden told his recruits, is a paper tiger. It is rich and comfortable. Hit it hard, said bin Laden, and America won't find the strength or will to fight back.
And now's an opportunity to do generations a favor by coming together and whipping terrorism, hunting it down, finding it, and holding them accountable.
We're here today, first and foremost, not as Republicans or as Democrats, not as South Dakotans or people from Mississippi, but we're all New Yorkers today.
In the days following September 11th, the civilized world struggled to come to terms with the magnitude of the crime.
It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
When Bill Clinton assumed the presidency in 1993, peace was in the air. The Soviet Union was no more. Less military spending meant more money for domestic programs. But at Princeton University, America's foremost scholar of the Middle East wasn't comforted by talk of peace.
We saw the fall of the Soviet Union as a Western victory. They didn't. They saw it as a Muslim victory. As they saw it, it was the desperate and finally successful struggle of the jihad fighters in Afghanistan that drove out the Red Army to defeat and collapse the end of the Soviet Union. And as Osama bin Laden puts it in his writings, in this final phase, the world of the infidels was dominated by two powers, the Soviet Union and the United States. We have defeated and destroyed the more difficult and the more dangerous of the two. Dealing with the other will be a comparatively easy matter.
In just the first month of the Clinton presidency, Arab extremists drove a truck full of explosives into the World Trade Center, murdering 5 people, sending thousands into the streets. It was an important milestone. Arab terrorism had arrived for the first time on American soil. In December of 2001, American bombers carved slow circles in the skies over eastern Afghanistan. Tora Bora, the final battle of the Afghan campaign. It was an astonishing victory. The Soviet Union had lost more than 15,000 men and had killed more than 1 million Afghans trying to tame this land. But just a few hundred American soldiers and some dazzling air power had routed its Taliban government. Afghanistan had been, in many ways, an idyllic home for the Arab fundamentalist movement. Here they had fought for their vision of the world, a society dragged back to the Middle Ages. Pure religion enforced at the point of a gun. It was a vision embraced across a growing segment of Arab and Islamic society. A vision that Osama bin Laden and his admirers intended to force on the rest of the world with an unrelenting campaign of terror and violence. Iran, birthplace of modern political Islam. The mullahs seized power in a wave of religious fury in 1979. They built a terrorist movement in Lebanon that killed 241 U.S. Marines. They orchestrated the Kobar Towers bombing and scores of other outrages. They built the cult of the suicide bomber. British and American planes patrolled the skies over northern and southern Iraq throughout the 90s, protecting the country's Kurdish and Shia minorities from the full weight of Saddam's cruelty.
We want to seriously diminish the threat posed by Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program.
Clinton said there was weapons of mass destruction without a congressional approval, never went to the Congress, he never went to the UN. He bombed in December 1998. We don't know whether he hit any weapons of mass destruction. The no-fly zones were up to 350,000 sorties. They were unsustainable. One day American and British pilots don't fly, then people in Kurdistan are going to be massacred. Every creepy person like Abu Abbas or Abu Nadal and al-Qaeda were in Kurdistan, and after 9/11 that was intolerable.
Iraq today harbors a deadly terrorist network headed by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, an associate and collaborator of Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda lieutenants.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Mr. George W. Bush, President of the United States of America.
On September 12, 2002, George Bush stood before the United Nations and declared that the end was coming in the 11-year showdown with Iraq. The pre-9/11 dance over weapons inspections had to end. The no-fly zones had to end. Saddam's persecution of his own people had to end. This was the new voice of American conservatism. Iraq would be the great experiment, the land where democratic, humane values would be allowed to triumph in a region that had known only tyranny.